Welcome to our channel, your gateway to the most spine-chilling tales and unnerving true stories. Today, we present a true story. Whispers in the Warehouse. Marcus Taylor, a young historian with a passion for the obscure, stumbles through the creaking front door of his quaint suburban bungalow. The warm embrace of early morning sunlight kisses his weary eyes, and he squints to adjust to the stark contrast from the shadowy confines of the Van Buren warehouse, where he's just finished his overnight shift. The warehouse, a sprawling maze of dusty corridors and forgotten artifacts, has been his second home for the past 6 months, a sanctuary from the monotony of academia where he can indulge in the thrill of unearthing the untold stories of the past. His keys jingle in his pocket, a symphony of metallic echoes in the quietude of his house, a stark reminder of the solitude that awaits him now that his fiancée, Lizzie, has left for her conference in the city. He kicks off his worn-out boots and drops his messenger bag by the door, the thought of his heavy work gear landing on the hardwood floor a cue to his body that it's time to clock out. The aroma of brewing coffee fills the air, a pre-programmed greeting from the coffee maker that whispers sweet nothings of caffeinated relief into the silence. Marcus trudges into the kitchen, his eyes drawn to the sticky note on the fridge, a love note from Lizzie, reminding him to eat something before collapsing into bed. He pours himself a cup, the dark liquid a lifeline to consciousness, and takes a long, lingering sip. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimes the hour with a solemn melody, each gong a gentle nudge closer to the realm of sleep. As he ascends the stairs, his hand slides along the polished banister, the familiar grooves a silent companion in his daily ritual. The soft carpet of the second floor muffles his footsteps as he heads toward their shared bedroom, the only room in the house that feels alive with the energy of their love. With a weary sigh, Marcus peels off his clothes and lets them drape over the chair, a silent protest against the need to fold them. He collapses onto the bed, the mattress sighing beneath his weight, and pulls the cool, crisp sheets over his tired body. He closes his eyes, the comfort of his sanctuary enveloping him like a warm embrace. But sleep is a fickle friend. Marcus's slumber is shattered by the sudden jolt of a door opening, the sound of thunderclap in the stillness of the house. His eyes fly open, his heart racing. The digital clock on the bedside table reads 3:47 a.m., a time that seems to whisper secrets of its own. For a moment, he lies still, his breath shallow and quick, listening for any sign of an intruder. The quietude is unbroken, save for the persistent ticking of the clock, which seems to have adopted a mocking rhythm. He dismisses the noise as a trick of his overtired mind, a fragment of his subconscious still entangled in the ghosts of the warehouse's storied past. The tales of the warehouse's haunted corridors have become part of the local lore, whispered by the night watchmen and giggling interns during their breaks. Marcus has always scoffed at such stories, preferring the tangible comfort of historical facts over the shaky ground of the supernatural. As he closes his eyes once more, he hears it again, a soft shuffling from the hallway. He sits up, his heart hammering against his ribcage like a caged bird desperate for escape. The door to the bedroom stands ajar, the sliver of light from the hall casting a long, eerie shadow across the floor. He tells himself it's just the house settling, the whispers of the wine playing tricks on his overactive imagination. But the sound grows closer, more distinct. The padding of footsteps, deliberate yet light, creeping closer to the threshold of his room. Marcus's hand reaches for the baseball bat he keeps next to the bed, a relic from his college days that now serves as an improvised weapon of comfort. He grips it tightly, his knuckles white with tension. The figure emerges from the shadows, a man dressed in the faded uniform of a bygone era. His eyes are sunken, his skin the color of parchment, and his gaze is locked onto Marcus with an intensity that sends a chill down his spine. Marcus's mind races, trying to place the man's face, the uniform, the context. And then it hits him. The man is a mirror image of the historical photograph hanging in the warehouse office, a picture of one of the building's original owners, Thomas Van Buren. The man's mouth opens, and a sound emerges, a garbled whisper that seems to resonate through the very fabric of the room. Marcus's grip on the baseball bat tightens, his knuckles now white with fear. But before he can react, the figure vanishes, leaving nothing but a lingering scent of dust and decay. Marcus jumps out of bed, the bat raised like a sword against an invisible enemy. His eyes dart around the room, searching the shadows for any sign of the spectral visitor. But all is still, all is quiet. The house sighs around him, its old bones creaking in the night as if to reassure him that he's the only one awake. He pads over to the bedroom door and gently pushes it closed, the wood groaning in protest. He locks it, the The click of the deadbolt, a feeble attempt to keep the outside world at bay. He takes a deep breath, trying to convince himself that he's hallucinating, that the stress of his job and the lack of sleep have conspired to play a cruel trick on him. But the doubt lingers, a persistent itch he can't quite scratch away. The encounter feels too real, too vivid to be dismissed as mere imagination. Marcus sits on the edge of the bed, his heart still pounding in his chest. He tries to piece together the puzzle, to find a logical explanation for what he's just seen. Could it be a costume party gone wrong? An elaborate prank by his colleagues? Or perhaps it's a sign, a message from the past trying to tell him something about the warehouse's secrets. The photograph of Thomas Van Buren had always intrigued him, the stern look in his eyes hinting at a story untold. With the first light of dawn, Marcus finds himself unable to shake the feeling of unease. He dresses and heads downstairs, the house feeling foreign and hostile around him. The coffee has gone cold, but he drinks it anyway, the bitter taste a reminder of the harsh reality that awaits. In the living room, he pulls out his laptop and types Thomas Van Buren into the search bar. The screen flickers to life, the pages of forgotten history scrolling before his eyes. The story of Thomas Van Buren unfolds, a tale of ambition and tragedy. The warehouse was once a bustling hub of commerce, a testament to the industrial spirit of the time. But a fire, a suspicious one, ravaged the building, claiming the lives of many, including Thomas's young wife and child. It's said that Thomas never recovered from the loss, that he roams the halls of the warehouse, searching for his family, forever trapped in his grief. Marcus can't help but feel a strange kinship with the man. His own life, while lacking in such dramatic loss, is haunted by the specter of his father's disappearance when he was just a child. The unanswered questions, the quiet whispers of his mother's grief, have shaped him into the man he is today. A seeker of truth in the forgotten pages of history, hoping to find solace in the stories of others. As the sun rises, casting a warm glow through the curtains, Marcus makes his decision. He'll investigate further, delve deeper into the archives of the warehouse, and perhaps find a way to lay Thomas's soul to rest. He leaves a note for Lizzie, promising to call her later and explain everything. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, he heads out the door, the baseball bat still clutched in his hand. The warehouse looms before him, its red brick facade a silent sentinel of the night's events. Marcus takes a deep breath and steps inside, the echo of his footsteps a solemn march into the unknown. The corridors are eerily quiet, the air thick with the scent of aged paper and antique furniture. He makes his way to the office, the photograph of Thomas watching him with those haunting eyes. The research begins, a journey through dusty ledgers and yellowed newspaper clippings. Marcus finds himself lost in the annals of time, piecing together a narrative that's both fascinating and terrifying. The more he learns, the more he's drawn into a world where the line between fact and legend blurs. His curiosity turns into obsession, each discovery fueling his desire to uncover the truth behind the man who visited him in the night. Days turn into nights, and nights into days, as Marcus's quest consumes him. His colleagues begin to whisper, their concern for his well-being tinged with suspicion. The warehouse's manager, Mr. Hendricks, a burly man with a no-nonsense attitude, warns him about the dangers of delving too deep into the past. But Marcus is undeterred, driven by a force he can't quite name. One evening, as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the warehouse floor, Marcus stumbles upon a hidden room. It's filled with the remnants of Thomas's life, personal effects untouched by time. A locket with a faded photograph of his family, a child's toy, a crumpled letter, all speaking of a love that transcended death. The final piece of the puzzle falls into place. Marcus realizes that Thomas wasn't just a grieving husband and father. He was also a man desperate for answers, for closure. His spirit, trapped by unresolved pain, had reached out to Marcus, perhaps sensing a kindred spirit. The climax unfolds in the heart of the warehouse, where Marcus confronts the ghost of Thomas Van Buren. Through tears and trembling words, Marcus shares his own story of loss and longing. He speaks of his father, the emptiness he's felt all his life, and the search for meaning that led him to this very moment. The ghost of Thomas seems to listen, his spectral form flickering with a hint of understanding. Together, they uncover the truth behind the fire, a tale of greed and betrayal that had been buried with the ashes. Marcus promises to honor Thomas's legacy, to share his story with the world, and to find a way to give him the peace he's been denied for so long. As the first light of a new day pierces the gloom of the warehouse, Thomas's ghost fades away, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He exits the building, the weight of his discovery both a burden and a gift. The world outside seems brighter, the air fresher, as if the shackles of the past have been lifted. Back at home, Marcus calls Lizzie, his voice filled with a newfound determination. He tells her everything, the ghostly visitation, the research, the revelations. Her voice, a soothing balm on his frayed nerves, assures him that she believes him, that she support him no matter what. The episode ends with Marcus sitting in the quiet of his study, the photograph of Thomas Van Buren staring back at him from the desk. He opens his laptop and begins to type, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he starts to write the true story of the Van Buren warehouse. The house, once a bastion of fear, now feels like a partner in his quest for understanding. The door to the bedroom upstairs creaks open, a gentle reminder that the past is never truly buried. Marcus looks up, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. The game is afoot, and he's ready to play his part in the grand tapestry of history. The future holds promise, the threads of fate weaving together in a dance of mystery and revelation. Marcus, a man in his mid-30s with dark circles under his eyes, wearily shuffles into his quiet suburban home. The moon casts a cold, blue light through the windows, revealing a lived-in yet orderly space. His keys clink as he tosses them onto the wooden hall table, echoing through the stillness of the night. He glances at the digital clock, 2:30 a.m. His shift at the Van Buren warehouse had been particularly grueling tonight. As he heads to the bedroom, the floorboards creak beneath his feet, a comforting sound that's been a lullaby for his years in this house. He collapses onto the bed, the mattress sighing under his weight. He's asleep in seconds, but his slumber is short-lived. A faint click jolts Marcus awake. His heart hammers in his chest as he listens for any other sounds in the quiet house. He tells himself it's just the old place settling, but the tension refuses to dissipate. He glances at the door. It's open, a sliver of light from the hallway spilling in. He's certain he'd closed it. The air in the room feels thick and suffocating. He can't ignore the feeling of being watched, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He tries to sit up, but his body feels leaden. The shadowy figure from his childhood nightmares looms in the doorway, unmoving, unblinking. Marcus's heart races, his mouth dry. Marcus wakes with a start, sunlight streaming through the open curtains. The figure from the night before is gone, but the fear lingers. He tries to convince himself it was just a vivid dream brought on by exhaustion. He stumbles into the kitchen, brewing a pot of strong coffee, his hands shaking slightly. The house seems too quiet, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos in his mind. The warehouse buzzes with activity as Marcus clocks in for his day shift. His colleagues, a motley crew of seasoned workers and young interns, exchange knowing glances as he walks by. The whispers of his nocturnal encounter have clearly spread. "Hey, Marcus," calls out Larry, an older worker with a graying beard and a twinkle in his eye. "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus forces a laugh. "Yeah, just had a weird night." "You and that old place," Larry says, nodding towards the towering shelves of historical artifacts. "It's got a mind of its own sometimes." Marcus can't shake the feeling that there's more to the warehouse than meets the eye. He pulls out a dusty, leather-bound book from his desk drawer. It's the warehouse's logbook, filled with tales of strange occurrences and unexplained events. He skims through the pages, eyes widening at the recurring mentions of his surname and the eerie similarities to his recent experiences. Marcus decides to investigate further, staying late after his shift. The warehouse is eerie at night, the shadows playing tricks on his tired eyes. He hears faint whispers and echoes of footsteps, but every time he turns to look, there's nothing there. The feeling of being watched intensifies. Deep in the bowels of the warehouse, Marcus stumbles upon a section cordoned off with yellow caution tape. His curiosity piqued, he ducks under it. The air is colder here, and a sense of dread clings to him like a second skin. He finds a box labeled Hayden Family. His surname. His heart skips a beat. Marcus brings the box home, his mind racing. Inside, he finds newspaper clippings, old photographs, and a tattered diary. The diary is from his great-grandfather, Henry Hayden, who had worked at the warehouse during its early days. The entries speak of strange occurrences, a malevolent presence, and the disappearance of several workers, including Henry's own son. Unable to sleep, Marcus reads through the diary entries, piecing together a chilling narrative. His great-grandfather had been part of a group that had accidentally uncovered something dark and ancient in the warehouse's foundation. They had tried to contain it, but it had claimed his son. The spectral figure from his dreams materializes in the corner of the room, Marcus's heart hammers in his chest as he watches it, frozen. It's the missing son, his great-uncle. The figure points to the diary, then to the warehouse, then vanishes. Marcus confronts his colleagues about the secrets they've been keeping. They reluctantly confirm the stories, explaining that the building was built on a site with a grim history of rituals and sacrifices. The energy from these events has been trapped within the walls, manifesting as the malevolent force he's been experiencing. Armed with newfound knowledge, Marcus decides to face the entity. He returns to the restricted area, the diary clutched in his hand like a talisman. He reads aloud an incantation he's found in the diary, feeling the power of the words resonate through the air. The air around Marcus grows colder, the whispers louder. The spectral figure of his great-uncle appears again, guiding him to a hidden chamber beneath the warehouse. The chamber is filled with artifacts from the rituals, and at its center is a pulsing, shadowy mass. Marcus recites the incantation, the air around him crackling with energy. The shadowy mass starts to dissipate, revealing a pit filled with bones and decayed remnants of past offerings. The spectral figure nods, then fades away. Marcus wakes feeling lighter, the heaviness in his chest gone. The house seems brighter, the air cleaner. He knows he's not rid of the specter entirely, but he's made peace with his family's past. He's ready to face whatever the warehouse throws at him next. As Marcus returns to work, he's greeted by his colleagues with a mix of relief and admiration. They know he's faced something they never could. The warehouse seems more alive now, less haunted. Marcus can't help but feel a newfound connection to the place, a responsibility to protect its secrets and ensure the restless spirits find peace. The soft hum of the archaic air conditioning system in the town's historical society was the only sound that pierced the silence as Marcus, eyes bloodshot and weary, sifted through the dusty archives. The musty scent of aged documents filled the air, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the Van Buren warehouse where he spent his long, exhausting nights. The clock on the wall ticked away, each second echoing like a ghostly whisper as the hands clawed their way closer to midnight. His heart thudded in his chest, not just from the caffeine overdose but from the anticipation of what he might discover. Marcus's fingers trembled as they traced over the brittle pages of an ancient town ledger, yellowed with time. His eyes widened with each new revelation, each line of text painting a grisly picture of the past. The Van Buren warehouse, once a symbol of prosperity, had a history stained with the darkest of secrets. The building had been constructed over a cemetery, a desecration that had been swept under the rug during the town's industrial boom. The name of the man from his dreams, the one that had been haunting his thoughts since the first unnerving encounter, leapt from the pages like a specter from the grave. His name was William Van Buren, the founder of the very warehouse that now bore his name. But William was no benevolent founder. He was a man with a penchant for the macabre, a man whose cruel deeds had earned him a place in the town's collective memory as a monster. Executed for his crimes, his body was buried in an unmarked grave on the very spot where his empire of horror had been built. The whispers of his colleagues at the warehouse had been more than mere speculation. They were echoes of a truth that had been buried for centuries. The spectral figure that had been invading Marcus's dreams and shadowing his reality was none other than the vengeful spirit of William Van Buren. The pattern of supernatural events, the unexplained sounds, and the sudden chills that had plagued the warehouse for decades, all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. William had found a way to cross the threshold from the afterlife to the land of the living. And now, it seemed, he had set his sights on Marcus. Marcus's investigation grew more intense as he discovered that his own family had been entwined with William's tragic tale. His great-great-grandfather had been one of the few who had dared to speak out against William's atrocities, only to vanish without a trace. The connection was undeniable, and the implications were chilling. The spirit had been growing stronger, feeding on the fear and fatigue of the warehouse workers. Marcus's overnight shifts had made him the perfect vessel, allowing William to infiltrate his dreams and slowly seep into his reality. As he pieced together the grim puzzle, he realized that he had become the focus of William's wrathful gaze. The town's historical society closed its doors, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the echoes of the past. His mind raced as he connected the dots, each one leading to a more terrifying revelation. He had to find a way to put an end to this before it was too late, before William could completely bridge the gap between their worlds. In the dim light of the archive room, a shadow flitted across the floor, a silent specter that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. He looked up, and for a fleeting moment, he saw the man from his nightmares standing before him, a twisted smile playing on his lips. The room grew colder, and the air thick with malice. Marcus slammed the book shut, the sound echoing through the hallowed halls like a gunshot. He gathered his notes and left, the chilling presence of William Van Buren following him like a second shadow. The night was dark and moonless, the streetlights casting eerie pools of light that did little to dispel the shadows. Marcus's footsteps echoed through the empty streets as he hurried home, the weight of his newfound knowledge pressing down on him like a leaden shroud. As he approached his house, the windows stared back at him like the hollow sockets of a skull, the curtains fluttering like the whispers of the damned. Inside, the house was still, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Marcus paused, his hand hovering over the light switch, his breath catching in his throat. He knew he wasn't alone. The air was charged with an energy that sent the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He ventured into the living room, the flickering light from the street lamps casting strange, elongated shadows on the walls. The spectral figure of William Van Buren materialized before him, his eyes burning with an otherworldly rage. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest as he backed away, his eyes never leaving the specter's face. "Why me?" Marcus demanded, his voice trembling. "What do you want?" William's chilling laughter filled the room, a sound that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "You, my dear boy, are the key to my freedom," he rasped, his voice like gravel being dragged across a chalkboard. "Your family line is strong, bound to this place by blood and betrayal. I will use your fear to tear down the barriers that keep me contained, and together, we will bring forth a new era of terror." Marcus's mind raced, searching for a way to fight back, to banish the spirit that had invaded his home and his life. He stumbled into the kitchen, his hand searching for anything that could serve as a weapon. His eyes fell upon a silver cross, a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations. Holding it aloft, he faced William, the symbol of his ancestors' faith glinting in the feeble light. "Get out of my house," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tremble in his hands. The spirit's eyes narrowed, and the room grew colder still. "You dare to challenge me," he sneered. "You know nothing of the power I wield." Marcus took a deep breath, his grip tightening around the cross. "I know enough," he replied firmly. "I know that you're trapped, and I won't let you use me to escape." With a roar of fury, William lunged at him, his translucent form passing straight through the cross. Marcus staggered back, the coldness of the spirit's touch like a knife to his soul. He realized that this was a battle he couldn't win alone. The following day, Marcus sought the help of an old woman, a local historian with a reputation for her knowledge of the supernatural. She listened to his story with a knowing nod, her eyes filled with a mix of pity and understanding. Together, they devised a plan to lay William Van Buren's spirit to rest once and for all. That night, Marcus returned to the warehouse, armed with the newfound determination and the tools the historian had provided him. The air was thick with tension as he approached the spot where William had been buried. The warehouse creaked and groaned around him, as if the very structure was aware of the impending confrontation. With trembling hands, Marcus performed the ancient ritual, reciting the incantations that had been passed down through his family. The air grew colder, and the shadows grew darker, coalescing into the terrifying form of William Van Buren. The spirit's eyes blazed with fury as Marcus held his ground, the cross in one hand and a vial of sacred earth in the other. "You can't have me," Marcus shouted over the cacophony of the warehouse's groaning timbers. "You can't use me to spread your evil." With a final, desperate act, Marcus shattered the vial, the sacred earth mixing with the dust of the floor. The room was filled with a blinding light, and William's screams echoed through the warehouse. As the light faded, the spirit was gone, and Marcus stood, panting and exhausted, in the quiet of the night. The next day, Marcus returned to work, the dark circles under his eyes telling a tale of his harrowing night. His colleagues offered him knowing looks, but no one spoke of the events that had transpired. The warehouse was quieter, the air no longer thick with tension. The spirit of William Van Buren had been laid to rest, and the town could finally begin to heal from its haunting history. But as Marcus went about his duties, he couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. The spirit of William Van Buren had been defeated, but the warehouse held many more secrets, many more lost souls yearning for peace. And deep down, Marcus knew that his connection to the place went beyond his job, beyond his family's history. It was a bond that could never truly be broken, a bond that would forever tie him to the haunting legacy of the Van Buren warehouse. Marcus returning to his mundane life, yet forever changed by the supernatural events that have unfolded. The door is left open for future episodes to explore the warehouse's many mysteries and the other spirits that may still be trapped within its walls. The quiet resolve in Marcus's eyes suggests that he is ready to face whatever comes next, knowing that he is now a part of the warehouse's storied past and the guardian of its troubled present. The sun had barely begun to dip below the horizon, casting an eerie, amber light through the windows of Marcus's house. His heart raced as he surveyed the living room, now crowded with unfamiliar faces and a smattering of paranormal equipment. The room buzzed with anticipation and a hint of fear, the air thick with the scent of sage and candle wax. Marcus felt his stomach lurch as he looked at the group of investigators, their expressions a mix of excitement and skepticism. They were here because of his pleas for help, his desperate need to understand what was happening to him. Marcus had always been a man of science, dismissing the whispers of ghosts and the supernatural as mere flights of fancy. But the events of the past week had shaken his world to its core. The spectral figure that had haunted his dreams for years had become a chilling reality, its presence in his home undeniable. His research had led him to the doorstep of the Van Buren warehouse, where he worked, and into the town's grim history. The spirit of the executed man, whose story he had uncovered, seemed to be entwined with his own in a way that was as terrifying as it was inexplicable. The leader of the paranormal investigation team, Dr. Elena Castillo, took charge. Her dark eyes were filled with an intensity that belied her calm demeanor. She instructed Marcus and the others to sit in a circle, their hands joined tightly. "Remember," she said, her voice steady, "stay focused, and do not, under any circumstances, break the circle." The room grew quieter than a tomb, the only sound the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. The candles flickered, casting shadows that danced upon the walls. Marcus felt the pressure of the grip around his hands, the warmth of the bodies beside him, and the cold draft that seemed to flow from the center of the room. Dr. Castillo began to chant, her words a mesmerizing blend of Latin and ancient incantations that seemed to resonate through the very walls of the house. The candles grew brighter, then dimmer, as if breathing in time with the spirits they were trying to summon. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled in the pit of Marcus's stomach. He glanced around the room, noticing the way the shadows grew darker, more menacing. The group's breathing grew ragged, the anticipation palpable. And then, it appeared. The spectral figure materialized slowly, the outline of a man, shimmering with an unearthly light. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest as he recognized the features of the man from his nightmares. The ghost's eyes bore into him, filled with a rage that was as ancient as it was powerful. The room grew colder still, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as the spirit's icy gaze swept over the terrified participants. "I am Edward Van Buren," the ghost growled, its voice a guttural rumble that seemed to emanate from the very walls. "This is my land, and you have defiled it with your ignorance and your fear." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat dry. "What do you want from me?" he managed to ask, his voice shaking. The ghost's expression twisted into a malicious smile. "You, Marcus, are the key to my vengeance. Your bloodline runs deep with the stains of my curse." The room grew colder, the candles flickering wildly as the ghost's energy grew more intense. Dr. Castillo's eyes widened, and she began to murmur counter-incantations, her voice a soft, steady lullaby in the face of the spirit's fury. "My ancestors built this warehouse upon my bones," the ghost continued, its voice rising in volume. "They thought to bury me, to forget the injustices they wrought. But I have watched, and I have waited. Now, I have found one who shares my blood." The spirit reached out a hand, its icy fingers brushing against Marcus's cheek. He flinched, but the others held him firm. "You will carry out my legacy," the ghost hissed. "You will bring fear and suffering to those who dare to forget me." "No," Marcus choked out, his eyes filling with tears. "I won't be a part of this." But the ghost was insistent. "You have no choice, my descendant. The bond is already forged." Panic began to set in as the others in the group gasped and murmured. Marcus felt the room spin, the weight of the spirit's words crushing him. He looked to Dr. Castillo for guidance, for a way out of this nightmare. Her eyes were closed, her lips moving rapidly as she worked to contain the malevolent energy. "Do not engage," she whispered to Marcus. "Do not give it power." The ghost grew angrier, its form becoming more solid, more terrifying. "You dare defy me?" Marcus felt a surge of determination. "I am not you," he said firmly. "I will not become you." The room grew colder, the air crackling with an unseen force. The ghost's eyes narrowed, and it leaned in closer. "You will," it whispered, its breath a chilling gust of air. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus felt a sudden warmth. A memory flooded him, of his grandmother's soothing voice, telling him stories of love and protection. The words of the incantation she had taught him as a child echoed in his mind. With trembling resolve, he spoke the words aloud. The ghost recoiled, its form flickering like a candle flame in a storm. The warmth grew stronger, filling the room with a soft, golden light that pushed back the shadows. The spirit's rage was palpable, but it was no match for the power of the ancient words. The room grew still, the only sound the frantic beating of their hearts. Dr. Castillo opened her eyes, a look of amazement on her face. "You did it," she whispered. Marcus looked around. The ghost of Edward Van Buren nowhere to be seen. The room felt lighter, the air warmer. He had defeated the spirit, at least for now. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus found himself unable to shake the feeling of being watched. The warmth that had protected him during the seance remained, but so did the fear. He knew that the spirit of Edward Van Buren was still out there, waiting for its chance to return. Marcus continued his research, piecing together the puzzle of his family's history with the warehouse. He discovered that his ancestors had been instrumental in the construction of the building, using the land where the executed man was buried to bury their own secrets along with him. One night, as he pored over dusty tomes and brittle newspaper clippings, Marcus stumbled upon a journal belonging to his great-great-grandfather. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded but legible. The entries spoke of a pact made with the spirit of Edward Van Buren, a promise to honor his name and carry out his vengeance. Marcus felt a cold hand close around his heart. The pact had been passed down through the generations, unfulfilled until now. The ghost had chosen him, believing he would be the one to complete the cycle of vengeance. Determined to break the curse, Marcus approached Dr. Castillo with his findings. Together, they devised a plan to perform a counter-ritual, one that would sever the bond between him and the vengeful spirit. The night of the new moon was chosen, a time when the veil between worlds was at its thinnest. The group of investigators returned to the warehouse, armed with knowledge and ancient artifacts that could banish the spirit for good. The air was thick with tension as they approached the spot where Edward Van Buren had been executed. The moon cast eerie shadows across the floor, painting the scene in stark black and white. Marcus took a deep breath and began to recite the counter-incantation, his voice strong and clear. The others joined in, their combined power resonating through the vast space. The air grew colder, and the warehouse seemed to shiver in response. Suddenly, the ghost of Edward Van Buren appeared before them, its eyes blazing with fury. "You dare to defy me?" it roared. Marcus stood his ground, the warmth of the protective spell surrounding him like a shield. "I do not serve you," he said firmly. "I will not be a pawn in your game of vengeance." The spirit surged forward, but the barrier held. Marcus could feel the rage beating against it, like a wild animal desperate to escape its cage. As the moon reached its zenith, the counter-ritual reached its peak. The warm light grew brighter, pushing back the spirit's rage until it was nothing but a flicker in the corner of the room. With a final, anguished scream, the ghost of Edward Van Buren disappeared, the air in the warehouse returning to normal. Marcus slumped to the floor, exhausted but triumphant. He had faced his fears and won. The curse had been lifted, and he was free. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, the spectral figure a distant memory. Marcus quit his job at the warehouse, unable to bear the weight of its haunting history. He moved to the city, eager to start anew, to leave the shadows of his past behind. But as he unpacked the last of his boxes in his new apartment, he found a small, leather-bound book nestled among his possessions. It was the journal of his great-great-grandfather. He opened it to the final page, where a message was scrawled in a hand he knew all too well. "You may have escaped my grasp," the ghost of Edward Van Buren had written, "but the pact remains unfulfilled. I will find another. The cycle will continue until justice is served. Remember, the sins of the fathers are visited upon the sons." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that the battle was not over. The spirit of Edward Van Buren was still out there, searching for a way to claim its vengeance. The legacy of fear lived on, waiting for the next unsuspecting descendant to stumble into its path. The invocation opens with Marcus, his eyes bloodshot and haunted, stumbling into the dimly lit Van Buren warehouse. The echoes of his footsteps bounce off the towering shelves filled with antique artifacts, each one seemingly watching him with a silent, knowing gaze. His mind is a whirlwind of fear and determination as he recalls the harrowing events of the previous episode. The spirit that has been haunting him, now revealed as the vengeful ghost of James Van Buren, the man whose execution was shrouded in the dark whispers of the town's past, has claimed Marcus as its intended vessel. Ignoring the chilling warnings from the paranormal investigators, Marcus clutches a well-worn journal that he had discovered during his feverish research. The pages are filled with the cryptic scribblings of his ancestor, Charles Marcus, a man who had also worked in the warehouse and had a disturbing obsession with the supernatural. Marcus knows that the key to ending this nightmare lies within the pages of this tome and the artifact it describes. He makes his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the warehouse, the air thick with the scent of dust and decay. The shadows seem to stretch and twist around him, reaching out like skeletal fingers, as if the very building itself is trying to dissuade him from his quest. Marcus's heart races as he arrives at the section of the warehouse that had been cordoned off for decades, the old office of James Van Buren. The door creaks open, revealing a room that appears to have been untouched by time. The dusty furniture is arranged neatly, as if waiting for its former occupant to return. Marcus's eyes scan the room, finally settling on a peculiar wooden box with intricate carvings, nestled in the corner of the room. His trembling hands trace the symbols etched into the wood, feeling a strange energy pulse beneath his fingertips. This is the artifact he's been searching for. Back at his house, Marcus lays the box on his kitchen table, surrounded by candles and protective talismans. His living room, once a sanctuary, now feels like a prison cell. The ghost's presence has become palpable, and the air is charged with an electric tension that makes the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He opens the journal to the marked page and begins the incantation, his voice shaking as he reads the ancient words aloud. The room grows colder, and the candles flicker erratically. The walls seem to breathe in and out, as if the house itself is alive and aware of the disturbance. The box emits a soft glow, and the carvings on its surface begin to pulse with a sickly light. Marcus feels a sudden surge of power, and the ghost of James Van Buren appears before him, more substantial than ever before. The spirit's eyes bore into Marcus's soul, filled with rage and desperation. "You have something that belongs to me," it hisses, its voice a chilling whisper that echoes through the room. Marcus, his resolve strengthened by the urgency of his situation, stands firm, demanding answers. The spirit, unable to resist the power of the artifact, reveals its true intentions. James Van Buren, a man wrongfully accused and executed for his supposed crimes, seeks to clear his name and avenge his unjust death. His soul, trapped in the artifact, has been waiting for a descendant with the right bloodline to set him free. But with freedom comes a price. Marcus must help him claim the lives of those who had conspired against him. Marcus, horrified by the revelation, refuses to be a part of the ghost's twisted quest. The spirit's anger boils over, and it lashes out, sending furniture flying and the room plunging into chaos. Marcus, clutching the artifact tightly, runs through the house, searching for a way to contain the ghost's power. In a moment of desperation, Marcus stumbles into the basement, a place that had always filled him with a sense of unease. The ghost pursues him, the shadows thickening and swirling like a living black fog. The basement walls are lined with shelves of forgotten jars and bottles, remnants of his grandmother's herbal remedies. Among them, he finds an aged spellbook that had once belonged to her. With the ghost looming over him, Marcus frantically flips through the pages, searching for a way to banish the spirit. His eyes fall upon an incantation titled The Invocation of the Tethered Soul. He reads the words aloud, his voice gaining strength as the power of the artifact mingles with the ancient magic. The basement quakes, and a blinding light bursts forth from the artifact. The spirit of James Van Buren is momentarily thrown back, howling in rage. Marcus feels a surge of energy, a fiery determination coursing through his veins. He sees the ghosts of the past, the faces of those who had conspired against James, their eyes pleading for mercy from beyond the grave. The spirit fights back, trying to coerce Marcus into completing the ritual that would set it free. It shows him visions of a town corrupted by greed and power, a place where justice was a commodity bought and sold. Marcus, torn between pity and fear, hesitates. But as the spirit's influence wanes, the true nature of the artifact is revealed. It is not a prison for James Van Buren's soul, but a conduit for his wrath. Marcus understands that by setting the spirit free, he would unleash a malevolent force upon the town. The ghost had been manipulating him all along, using his desire for answers to serve its own dark purposes. Marcus makes a decision. He will not be a pawn in this ghostly game of vengeance. Instead, he will lay James Van Buren's soul to rest and end the curse that has haunted his family for generations. He recites the final words of the incantation, the room resonating with power. The spirit, weakened by Marcus's resolve, is drawn back into the artifact. The wooden box pulses with a fiery light before collapsing in on itself, leaving only a pile of ash and dust. Marcus, drained and weary, collapses to the floor, his heart racing. Days later, Marcus returns to the warehouse. The artifact remains in hand. He confesses everything to his colleagues, who listen in shocked silence. Together, they decide to hold a proper burial for James Van Buren's remains, hoping that by giving him a peaceful rest, they can also lay the spirit to rest. At the end, we saw Marcus standing in the cemetery, the freshly dug grave of James Van Buren before him. The townsfolk, many descendants of those involved in the original conspiracy, gather around, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. As Marcus scatters the ashes into the grave, he feels a strange sense of peace wash over him. The spirit's influence has been broken, and the town can finally begin to heal from its haunted past. Marcus sitting in his now peaceful home, the spectral figure of James Van Buren appearing before him one last time. The ghost nods in understanding before it fades away, its unfinished business now entrusted to the living. Marcus closes his eyes, knowing that he has made the right choice, and that his own nightmare is finally over. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his hands trembling as he cradled a cup of lukewarm coffee. The echoes of the previous night's seance still reverberated in his mind, each chilling word from the spirit more haunting than the last. The room was draped in a pre-dawn light, casting long shadows across the floorboards. The house was eerily silent, save for the occasional creak of a floorboard. It was a silence that screamed of the presence of the unseen. The artifact from the Van Buren warehouse sat on the table before him, emanating an aura of malevolence that seemed to suffocate the very air around it. The object was a tarnished metal box, adorned with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Marcus had hoped that bringing it home would help him understand the spirit's motives, but instead, it had only intensified the haunting. The visions had grown more vivid, more terrifying, with each passing hour. He saw scenes of horror played out in the very walls of the warehouse, the spirits of the past reaching out to him, begging for release. The doorbell rang, jolting him from his grim reflection. On the doorstep stood a woman with a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck, despite the warmth of the early morning. She had a knowing look in her eyes, a gaze that pierced through the facade of the mundane. This was Evelyn, the local psychic that Marcus had reached out to in desperation. Marcus opens the door, ushering Evelyn in. She steps over the threshold, her eyes immediately drawn to the artifact on the table. Evelyn whispers, "You've brought it here." Marcus desperately says, "I had to. The visions, they won't stop." Evelyn nods solemnly and says, "I know what you're dealing with, Marcus. It's not just a ghost. It's a demon." Marcus's heart skipped a beat at the mention of the word demon. He had hoped for a simple haunting, something that could be explained away with science or reason. But the visions, the intensity of the spirit's rage, suggested something far more sinister. In the morning, Marcus leads Evelyn to the living room, where they sit opposite each other, the artifact on the coffee table between them. Evelyn says, "You need to understand, Marcus. This isn't a simple matter of laying a spirit to rest. This demon has been bound to this land for centuries, waiting for someone with the right connections." Marcus says, "Connections?" Evelyn says, "Your family. The bloodline. It's linked to this creature." Marcus's thoughts race back to the town's archives, the grim tales of his ancestors and their ties to the warehouse. His stomach twisted into knots as he realized the full extent of his involvement. Marcus says, "What do you mean?" Evelyn says, "The man you saw in your dreams, the one you've been seeing around the warehouse, he was a warlock, a powerful one. His descendants, they've been keeping his spirit at bay, but it's grown stronger. It's found you." Marcus felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. His family, the very people he had trusted to keep him safe, had been hiding a dark secret. A secret that had now become his burden. Evelyn says, "The only way to banish it is to confront your fears and the truth of your lineage. You must make a pact." Marcus says, "A pact? With a demon?" Evelyn says, "Not with it. Against it. A pact with the forces that can contain it. But it won't be easy." Marcus stared at the artifact, feeling the weight of his family's history pressing down on him. He knew what he had to do. The room was now adorned with candles and crystals, the air thick with incense. Marcus and Evelyn sat in a circle, their eyes closed, reciting an ancient incantation. The air grew colder, the candle flames flickered erratically. Suddenly, the house was filled with the sound of shattering glass. The windows exploded inwards, showering the room with shards. The demonic presence grew stronger, the air thick with malice. Marcus opens his eyes, his heart racing. He sees the ghostly figure of the warlock standing before them, the rage in his eyes palpable. Ghost of the warlock voice, you dare to challenge me, my descendant. Marcus says, I dare to free us both. The room grew colder still, the air crackling with supernatural energy. Marcus could feel the spirit's anger, his own fear threatening to overwhelm him. Evelyn whispers, urgently finish the incantation. Marcus took a deep breath, his voice shaking as he recited the final words. The runes on the artifact began to glow a fiery red, and the room was filled with an otherworldly light. The ghostly figure of the warlock roared in fury, but the light grew stronger, surrounding him, consuming him. Marcus felt a sudden surge of power, a warmth that filled his body and pushed the fear aside. As the light dimmed, the spirit was gone. The room grew quiet once more, the candles flickering back to life. Marcus looked down at the artifact, now inert and powerless. Evelyn smiling softly, you've done it. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, but it was tinged with sadness. He had uncovered a part of his family's history that would never be forgotten. Marcus and Evelyn sat in the quiet, the debris from the battle scattered around them. Marcus sighs, what now? Evelyn says, now, you live with the knowledge of what you are, and you protect others from the darkness. Marcus nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He had become a guardian of sorts, a protector of the living from the malevolent spirits that sought to cross over. Marcus stands on the porch, watching as Evelyn's car disappears into the night. He turns back to the house, now peaceful and still. But the echoes of the past lingered, a reminder of the pact he had made. Marcus places the artifact in a wooden box, sealing it with a heavy lock. He hides it in the back of a kitchen cabinet, out of sight but never forgotten. Marcus lies in bed, the events of the day playing on a loop in his mind. As he drifts off to sleep, he knows that this is just the beginning. His journey into the supernatural has only just begun. Marcus sits at his kitchen table, surrounded by candles and ancient texts, his face a mask of determination. He runs his fingers over the artifact, feeling a malevolent energy pulse beneath its surface. The psychic, Lilith, stands across from him, her eyes closed in concentration. Lilith whispers, when you enter the shadow realm, do not let your fear guide you. The echoes of the past are not your truth. Marcus says, how will I find the demon's power source? Lilith opens her eyes, look for the light, for that is where the darkness is born. Marcus nods, takes a deep breath, and holds the artifact aloft. The candles flicker wildly, and a vortex of shadows coalesces before them. With a final nod to Lilith, Marcus steps through the swirling darkness. The world outside the vortex dissolves into a twisted landscape of shifting shadows and whispers. Marcus stands in a desolate place, his heart pounding in his chest. He looks around, his eyes slowly adjusting to the gloom. Marcus to himself, this is insane. He starts to walk, the ground beneath him feeling like a sponge, absorbing the sound of his footsteps. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying memories. The path ahead twists and turns, lined with the silhouettes of his ancestors, their faces obscured by the shadows. Marcus sees moments from his past, distorted and haunting. Marcus' voice trembling, what is this place? The shadows whisper in response, a cacophony of voices that slowly coalesce into a single, chilling message. Shadow voices, you are one of us. Marcus shakes his head, pushing the voices aside. He continues, each step taking him deeper into the heart of his own fears. Marcus arrives at a clearing, where a dim light flickers in the distance. The whispers grow louder, and the air thickens with anticipation. Marcus whispers the power source. He cautiously approaches the light, which reveals itself to be a bonfire, surrounded by the shadowy figures of his ancestors. The demonic spirit of the executed man, now a towering, monstrous form, stands before it. Demon voice, welcome, Marcus. I've been waiting for you. Marcus clutches the artifact tightly, his knuckles white. Marcus says, what do you want from me? Demon voice, your legacy is mine. The flames of the bonfire dance, casting flickering light across the demon's twisted features. Marcus's mind is bombarded with images of his ancestors' crimes, each one more horrific than the last. Marcus stands firm, his resolve strengthening with each vision. Marcus says, you may have their blood, but I am not like them. Demon voice, you carry the same darkness within you. Marcus raises the artifact, and the demon's eyes widen. Marcus says, I reject your legacy. With a roar, the demon lunges for Marcus, but he stands his ground, focusing on the light within the artifact. The artifact emits a blinding light, pushing the demon back. The shadowy figures of Marcus' ancestors begin to dissipate as the light grows stronger. Demon writhing in pain, you cannot destroy what is eternal. Marcus advances, the light growing with each step. Marcus firmly, this ends now. He throws the artifact into the bonfire. The flames surge upwards, engulfing the demon in a fiery embrace. The demon's screams pierce the shadowy realm as the light expands, obliterating the darkness. The demon's power is gone, and the shadow realm starts to crumble. Marcus looks around, the echoes of his ancestors' sins fading away. Marcus whispers, "I am free." Lilith's voice calls to him from the void. Lilith voice, "Marcus, you must return." The vortex reappears, and Marcus runs towards it, the light from the bonfire guiding his way. Marcus stumbles back into his kitchen, panting and disoriented. The candles are out, and Lilith is there, looking concerned. Lilith voice, "You did it." Marcus breathlessly, "What now?" Lilith takes the artifact from his trembling hands. Lilith softly, "Now, you rebuild." Marcus stands in the doorway of his living room, the artifact in Lilith's possession. The spirit of the demon appears, weakened but not defeated. "Demon weakly, you may have won this battle, but I will never be forgotten." Marcus says, "You will never have my soul." The demon spirit dissipates into the air, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. Days later, Marcus sits in his now normal home, surrounded by the paranormal investigators and Lilith. They perform a cleansing ritual, filling the space with the scent of sage and chanting to purge any remaining negative energy. Marcus voice, "I had faced my fears, and in doing so, I discovered that the most terrifying monsters are not always those that lurk in the shadows." The camera pans over the room, showing the group standing in a circle, their voices rising in unity. The ritual complete, Lilith approaches Marcus. Lilith says, "You have a gift, Marcus. A connection to the other side." Marcus confused, "What are you saying?" Lilith places her hand on his shoulder. Lilith says, "You can help others, those trapped by their own fears." Marcus looks at her, realization dawning. Marcus voice trembling, "What do I do?" Lilith smiles. Lilith says, "Find them, Marcus, and set them free." Marcus wakes up to the sound of his phone ringing. He answers, his voice still groggy. Marcus says, "Hello." The voice on the other end is faint but familiar. Voice whispers, "Marcus, I need your help." The episode opens with Marcus, his eyes bloodshot and his nerves frayed, pacing the floor of his living room. The ancient artifact, a tarnished silver locket adorned with arcane symbols, lies open on the coffee table. The locket's contents, a strand of hair and a dried, crumbling piece of parchment illuminated by the flickering candlelight. The psychic's words from their previous encounter echo in his mind, haunting him with the revelation that his ancestor had made a pact with the demon, binding it to the Van Buren warehouse and his family line. At night, Marcus 30s, weary, stares at the artifact, his reflection warped in its aged surface. His eyes dart to the window, where the moon casts a silvery glow on the floorboards. Marcus whispers to himself, "The curse. It's real." The door to his room creaks open, and he jumps. His sister, Lucy 20s, concerned, steps in, her eyes red from crying. Lucy says, "Marcus, what's going on? Why is everyone talking about a demon?" Marcus says, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Flashback to the Van Buren warehouse. Marcus's colleagues, Rachel 30s, skeptical but supportive, and Tyler 20s, tech-savvy and curious, sit around a table laden with research materials, their faces a mix of shock and skepticism. Rachel says, "So, you're telling us that this demon has been haunting your family for generations?" Marcus nods solemnly. "And it's getting stronger," Tyler says. "But why you? Why now?" Marcus says, "Because I'm the last of the line. The pact has to be broken by a direct descendant." Marcus sits at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, recounting the psychic's story to Lucy. She listens, her expression a mix of horror and disbelief. Lucy says, "But what can we do?" Marcus says, "I have to return the artifact to the warehouse and confront it." Lucy says, "And what about the demon's power?" Marcus says, "The psychic said that I need to face my fears and reject the pact. That's the only way to break the curse." The siblings make their way to the warehouse, the locket heavy in Marcus's pocket. The building looms over them, its windows like hollow eyes in the night. The air inside is thick with anticipation. Every shadow seems to twitch and move, as if alive. Marcus leads Lucy through the aisles, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As they approach the center of the warehouse, a cold wind sweeps through, extinguishing their lights. The locket grows warm against Marcus's skin. Marcus' voice trembling, "It knows we're here." Suddenly, the lights flicker back on, revealing the ghostly figure of the demon standing before them. It's a twisted amalgamation of the man from Marcus's nightmares and the demon he faced in the shadow realm. Demon voice, "You've come to join me, I presume?" Marcus resolutes, "No. I've come to end this." The demon laughs, a sound like shattering glass. Demon voice, you think you can break a pact forged in blood with mere conviction. Marcus pulls out the artifact, holding it high. The demon's eyes flicker with greed. Marcus says this is where it ends. The demon lunges, but Rachel and Tyler emerge from the shadows, armed with makeshift weapons and a determination to help their friend. Rachel says, we're not letting you do this alone. The group forms a protective circle around Marcus, who begins to chant the incantation the psychic had taught him. The warehouse shakes as the demon's power swells, knocking over shelves and sending debris flying. The demon's eyes flare with malevolence as Marcus's chant reaches a crescendo. The locket in his hand starts to glow fierce, blinding white. The demon roars, and the ground beneath them splits open, revealing a chasm of writhing shadows. Marcus feels himself being pulled toward it. Lucy screams, Marcus. Marcus grits his teeth, fighting the pull. Rachel and Tyler grab his arms, their grips tight and unyielding. Rachel shouts over the chaos, remember what you said about fear. Marcus to the demon, you have no hold over me. With a final burst of strength, Marcus hurls the artifact into the abyss. The demon's scream pierces the air as it's sucked into the void, the ground ceiling shut with a thunderous boom. The warehouse falls silent. Marcus slumps to the floor, his friends rushing to his side. Marcus exhausted, it's over. The locket's light fades, and the demon's influence wanes. The air in the warehouse feels cleaner, lighter. The group leaves the warehouse, the weight of the curse lifted from their shoulders. As they step into the night, the warehouse seems to shrink behind them, no longer a looming menace but a silent sentinel of the past. Marcus, Rachel, Tyler, and Lucy sit together, sipping coffee and sharing a moment of relief. The house feels peaceful for the first time in weeks. Rachel says, what now? Marcus smiles, now, we live. The camera pans out, showing the house in the early light of dawn. The curtains blow gently in the breeze, and for a brief moment, the spirit of Marcus's ancestor seems to pass by the window, nodding in approval before fading away. Marcus says the Van Buren curse is no more, but the whispers of the past will always linger. We carry the stories of those who came before us, and it's up to us to choose whether we let them define us or set us free. Thank you so much for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform. Until next time, happy movie watching.